Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. Tonight I want to share with you guys all of the stuff that I have been reading this first part of October. I cannot believe we are already halfway through October. I waited all year long for the fall to come and now it's going by so quickly already. I really need to make sure and find something to do each day to slow down and savor this season. It's my favorite time of year and it is finally cooling off. We are supposed to have some storms on Saturday and then it's going to cool off a good 10, maybe even 15 degrees. Much cooler in the evenings, down into the 40s, where we have been in the 60s and 70s. So, in high 80s in the days. So it will feel so nice. I am super excited about it. But even now it feels really nice. It's just a little bit after 5 and I decided to come sit out on the porch. It's a nice evening. It's like maybe mid 70s and not super humid. So I'm loving it. The leaves are falling a little bit and the trees are changing a little bit. Not too much. They're definitely losing leaves. Things are thinning out. But I want the leaves to stick around long enough to change color, right? So they're saying that our peak color time is supposed to be like the first week of November. So hopefully most of the leaves will stick around and turn up the pretty colors before they fall. So our family has been on vacation for the last 10, 11-ish days. We didn't go too far. We just went a couple hours south and we stayed in an Airbnb in southeast Oklahoma and really had a nice time. It was just my husband and I and our 6 children who are still at home. We spent a lot of time in nature, a lot of time reading, took a couple of field trips. I fell and sprained my ankle really bad. So I have been gimping around trying to unpack and with my gimpy foot. But it was a really nice, relaxing time. And I read quite a stack of books while I was there. So I wanted to share all that with you guys. We did visit 2 bookshops while we were there. We went to a Books-A-Million, which I have never been to a Books-A-Million before. And when I went in, it was laid out quite a bit similar to Barnes & Noble, like almost exactly. It was actually kind of weird that it was, but they had a lot of things in there that I haven't seen in our Barnes & Noble, and so that was interesting. We liked it, and it was a great shop, and so the one thing that I did buy in there was a copy of Dracula. I had mentioned this recently on a video talking about how I wasn't sure that I wanted to read it. I was talking about the different Gothic novels that I was thinking about reading for October and how I just didn't want to do something that was going to be really just kind of on the demonic side. And then I had some people, message and say, no, it's not really like that. It's just kind of, Victorian horror like Frankenstein or whatever it would be. And so I'm going to give it a try. So I got that at that shop. And then we went to a little town kind of next door to the one we were at and went to an independent bookshop called Chapters on Main. And my daughter, who loves to dress up like all kinds of stuff, she was Mary Poppins that day. And so they put her on their Facebook page. I'll show you guys a picture here. So that was kind of fun. She is very much used to having her picture taken and being on people's Instagrams, the different outfits that she comes up with. But that's our oldest daughter, Lindsay. She is almost 26 and she is actually starting a booktube channel too. So I will put her link in the description when she gets her video up. But anyway, went to that shop and it was really neat. Had a coffee shop and, books, a lot of old books that had used and new. And it just seemed kind of like a neat, like community hub sort of a place. I followed their Facebook page and it looks like they have like someone coming to do live music pretty soon. And it just looked like a neat place, but I didn't buy any books there for myself. I bought a few for my kids. And then my husband bought me this sticker. It says, "My girl gang is a book club." And he's like, that sticker is so much not you that it's you. So the sentiment, yes. The biker jacket, not so much. You guys probably could have guessed that. But I thought it was adorable and yeah, perfect. So he was really like super excited to buy me this sticker. So I'm going to put it in my journal for the time that we were there. So before my trip, I did finish one book, and that is Spindrift by Phyllis Whitney. This is one of a few books that my mom sent to me sometime in the last year, I think. And she had a bunch of like Gothic novels that were my grandmother's, some of them were hers, and she sent me a box of them. And they all have these pretty paper covers on them, and they're just all really like cool vintagey books from the 60s and 70s. And so that is one of the reasons why I felt inspired to do Gothic October this month. That is an event that I created to read Gothic novels and focus on classic Gothics. So you guys can learn more about that in the link down in the description. But this was my first Gothic October read that I finished, Spindrift. This main character, Christy Borland, it picks up where she has just been released from an asylum. She's going through kind of a depression because her father had died. She had found him. She believes he was murdered. No one else believes that. Everyone, is calling it a suicide. They've just sort of hushed it up. And that was about 9 months before the book starts off. So Christy has just gotten home from the asylum, and her husband says that they are going to go to Spindrift, which is the estate where his mother lives, and his mother has been taking care of their young son during this time. They're going to go there and stay for a while. And Christy is like, so yeah, just probably exactly what you want to do when you are just recovering from an asylum, is to go stay with an overbearing, domineering mother-in-law like Christy has. So they go there. She insists that her father was murdered. Nobody wants to even take her seriously. She does not get along with this mother-in-law. There's tension about how to raise the boy. The mother-in-law has been turning the boy against her. Her husband is weak and defends his mother instead of defending her and trying to rebuild their family. And anyway, it's just kind of... it goes from there. Weird things happen to her in the house. Weird things just happen in general in the house. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't horrible. It wasn't super deep, and the author pulls out every single Gothic trope, she could possibly think of and puts them all into the story. The ending was satisfying. There was a little twist that I didn't see coming, so it wasn't completely, predictable. But I don't know. I will read more by this author, and I'm glad I read this, but it wasn't super awesome. Phyllis Whitney is known as one of the queens of American Gothic fiction. She actually did not like that term. She preferred that her work be called romantic suspense. And so it was definitely that. She's also known for having kind of some straight-laced, squeaky clean characters. And I'd say for the most part, her main character was pretty straight-laced, and that's just fine with me. All right, and then next up, I finished Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I started this a few days before the beginning of October. I was just really excited to read it. I'm glad that I did. So I am going to count it for Victober. I read most of it this month, and I wouldn't necessarily count it for Gothic October. It does have some Gothic elements, especially the portions that feature Miss Havisham, but for the most part, it's not completely a Gothic novel, right? But there's a lot to this story. So this kid Pip, he is, lives in kind of a, what we would consider an impoverished situation with his sister and her husband. And they don't have a lot. But one day Pip meets a guy down by the river. He is an escaped convict, and the guy asks him for some food and whatever, some stuff. And so Pip goes and actually steals from his sister from her home to give this guy some food, and then it just kind of goes from there as far as each stage of Pip's life, the good and the bad, the things that he gets involved in and the things that sort of shape him. He ends up having the opportunity to go and hang out with this lady, Miss Havisham, who has lived for who knows how long in this room of her mansion that is crumbling down around her. She was jilted at the altar, basically, and so she lives her life in her old wedding dress, just kind of mad. And she has a ward, Estella. And so Pip comes over to, I guess, play with Estella, and Miss Havisham enjoys watching them play. But Miss Havisham has kind of bred Estella to be a man-hater and to, just take advantage of them and just be kind of a horrible person. And so Pip, there's that interaction. And it's what's called a Bildungsroman. So that is a story that follows one character all through a majority, a big part of their life, from early childhood into adulthood, and just follows for quite a while, a couple of decades. And so that is called a Bildungsroman sort of story. And that's what this is. And so clear into Pip's adulthood, we just watch him sort of make mistakes and the good and the bad of his life. And it's funny and it's sentimental. And the first time that I read this was 2015, and I remember hating Estella and loving Pip. And this time that I read it, now 10 years later, things are a little more murky. I found that I was really irritated with Pip, and I had a little more sympathy for Estella. Pip ends up coming into some money, and he doesn't know who his benefactor is. But the way that he sort of conducts himself and treats the people around him and the people that care about him, it's not always the best. It's not always the greatest. He doesn't always have the greatest character. And so I think that I was really irritated with him because of where he ended up in life. It could have been different. He could have been a different person in good, better ways. And then like for Estella, I think she really was just trying to get by the best she can with the circumstances that she had. So I did feel more compassionate towards her this time for sure. I noticed that I picked up a lot more on the descriptions of the Thames during this read. When I read it the first time, I had only been to England one time. I didn't pay any attention to the Thames or London. I had no idea what I was doing at all. But since then, I have had a chance to go back to England quite a few times. I've had a chance to spend time in London and to spend time around the Thames. I've studied a lot about London, about the river and its relation to the city and to the people around it throughout history. A really great novel that brings all that into perspective through all eras is the story called London by Edward Rutherfurd. It is like 1,000 pages long, but it is such a fantastic history of London and the River Thames and the people around it, and that relationship. When you read about the Thames in anything, that is very deep, you find that it is a main character of its own. Like it has its own biography and it has its own, just personality and characteristics. And so I was able to really pick that out here in this story in ways that I, just hadn't been able to before. So I really, really enjoyed that. There's a lot that I want to say about this book. I will leave it at that. But I may do a video essay because I do have a lot to say. I just have a lot of spoilers. You don't have to include spoilers in it if I do that. So let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video essay on Great Expectations. If so, I will put that together. All right, and then I also finished Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is the group read for Gothic October. You guys, if you are interested in having a discussion about this book, I do have a Discord. The link is in the description. There's not a lot of people talking about it on the Discord, and that's totally fine because I just find that I'm not really great at that, really. But I would love to have a discussion if people want to, but there's only a couple of us really, and they're talking about it right now. So if you're reading Rebecca and you want to talk about it a little bit, join the Discord and talk to us in the chat there. But I am going to be doing a video essay on Rebecca here very soon. I have it all written up and have a lot to say. It will contain spoilers, so just a warning. But Rebecca is one of the classic it's even on the I was gonna say it's a classic American novel, but it's not. Like, it's a British novel by a British author, but it is so just in our culture here in America as well, that it is on our bestseller lists, and it's just always been a bestseller here since it was published like in 1938. It's a very popular story. So I don't know how popular it is in the UK, but it is super popular here in the US. So this is one of the classic Gothic stories. It's one of the best ones. Like, if someone said, what is the #1 Gothic story that you would recommend? This is it, Rebecca. It's fantastic. It has so much great symbolism. I'm going to talk all about that in my video essay. I can't wait. I'm actually going to make it as soon as I get done with this video because I'm really excited. But this story is basically, there's this young girl. She is a companion to a woman who is on, vacation in Monte Carlo. And she meets a wealthy estate owner who has an estate at Cornwall called Manderley. They end up getting married just on the fly, and she goes to live there at Manderley. He has been married before to a woman named Rebecca, and his name is Maxim de Winter, this new Mrs. de Winter, who is actually never named in the story. She very quickly finds that Rebecca's memory and Rebecca's ways still sort of permeate Manderley. One of the staff, especially, called Mrs. Danvers, just cannot get over Rebecca. Rebecca had died the year before, and Mrs. Danvers is not over it. And so the story just goes from there, that this young woman, this new wife, who is quite a bit younger than Mr. de Winter, she is very timid and very cautious about changes at Manderley. It's a class of people that she's never been a part of, right? And so she struggles to acclimate. So we'll put it that way. It gets kind of freaky, and then it gets freakier, and it's one of those just psychologically weird stories. Super fantastic, but it does take a little bit to get into. Once you finish it, you realize that everything mattered. But the first chapters are a little difficult. You get frustrated with the main character for sure. You get frustrated with many characters, and you start to wonder, when is this going to pick up? Where's all the Gothic elements? And then you get to chapter 18, and it gets a little freaky. And then you get to chapter 19, and everything turns on its head, and everything explodes, and you realize, oh. And then after that is where the psychological weirdness comes in. So if you're interested in reading that, pick it up, read it real fast, because I'm going to put out that video essay. I think you guys will enjoy hearing the different things that I'm going to draw out regarding symbolism, regarding names, regarding just our own personal character and how we respond to this story. I have a lot to say about it. If you want to just get a real quick look at the story, so that you can be ready for that video essay, or to participate in the chat or whatever, you can watch, I think it's in 1940, I think is the year that it was put out. It's got Laurence Olivier, and is it Olivia de Havilland? Hold on, let me look. No, Joan Fontaine. Yes. Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine. Oh, it's fantastic. It's such a good movie. So you can even just watch that. They have it on YouTube as of like right this moment. You can watch it for free on YouTube, and then be looking for that video essay. It's going to be good. All right, the next book that I finished was Anthony Hope's The Prisoner of Zenda. This book, I don't even know how I came across this, why I thought I needed to read this. I don't know if it was on like a classics list or something, but I have had it in my head for a really long time that this was a really important book to read. It wasn't bad. I am glad that I read it. It's an adventure story, and there's lots of swashbuckling, sword fighting, slashing of people without batting an eye, that kind of stuff. It's totally not my kind of book at all. It also has a little bit of kind of the Prince and the Pauper feel to it. So basically there's this guy, he ends up going to visit a neighboring country, right? He's from England. He goes to visit the neighboring country of Ruritania, which is a made-up country, obviously. Once he enters Ruritania, there is a mix-up with the king, and the king and him, this guy Rudolph, actually they're both named Rudolph, which is sort of, you know, confusing and strange, but there's a mix-up, and this guy Rudolph from England ends up taking the place of the king and impersonating him for a while. And so it's, you know, he's trying to fight the king's enemies. He's trying to protect the king. He's trying to eventually switch back without anybody finding out. In the meantime, he falls in love. Just all kinds of different things happen in this very short little book. I read it in just a couple of hours. And it moved fast. Like, it was a good story. It just wasn't my kind of story, right? But if I was into adventurous swashbuckling sorts of things, then yeah, this would be up there on my top list. It was well written. It was a fun story. I personally did not like how it ended, but it was okay. So anyway, apparently this book, The Prisoner of Zenda, spawned a whole like genre of literature called Ruritanian literature or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of a fun rabbit hole to read about The Prisoner of Zenda and everything that came out of it. I think there's like a sequel maybe, and I probably won't be reading it anytime soon, but I read this and now I'm done. So not a Gothic, but definitely works for Victober. And then the final book that I finished on my vacation was The Cottage Fairy Companion by Paola Merrill. And she's a YouTuber who, I don't know, I think she posts less than she used to. She's been married and she has a child now, and so, you know, life is busy. But she started out on YouTube making videos about her cabin in, like, it's kind of central east-ish northern Washington. Okay, so like the tippy top north part of Washington, very close to the Canada border. There's the little town that I won't name just for her own privacy, but I know because I'm familiar with this town and I've been there multiple times. But it's kind of north central, kind of more on the east side, tippy top of Washington. Anyway, it's beautiful. It's in a valley surrounded by mountains, and it's just a gorgeous place. Well, she started out making videos about her time there in her cabin that she was renovating, and just, you know, aesthetic sort of cottagey, you know, sorts of videos. And then she ended up getting married, and I think that they live somewhere else nearby now. But anyway, I don't really know because I don't actually watch her all that much, but I've watched a few videos, and I don't know, they're kind of like more melancholy than hopeful, but still like aesthetically pleasing. So, you know, you can watch them if you're in a mood. But she put together this book, and it says that it's a cottagecore guide to slow living, connecting to nature, and becoming enchanted again. It's not really a guide. It's more like I would assume that it's her video dialogues sort of reprinted here. It's like little essays, little snippets, things that you would write in your journal, with a few different recipes and craft ideas. Lots of photographs, which, you know, a lot of these, like I said, I think are stills from her videos. But I did get several good things out of it. I think for what it is, it's wonderful. She's very young. Her voice is, you know, she hasn't had a lot of life experience, right? So it can seem kind of trite. But if you understand, it's just a young girl in her 20s writing about her life so far, then that's good. But she has several like kind of quotable things in here. As you can see, I tabbed several pages, and one of these parts, she says, "The greatest thing that my cottage experience offered me was that I had never actually needed it. I truly believe that a beautiful life can only be cultivated through time and effort. It isn't so much dependent on where you live, but how. The hardest lesson I've ever learned is that happiness isn't a location." And I thought that was really good. I tend to kind of be on the Jane Austen camp of if a girl cannot, you know, find awesomeness in her own backyard, then she must seek it abroad, sort of thing. But really, in reality, like, if you can't be settled where you're at, then it might be hard for you to be settled anywhere. But again, that does determine on your circumstances. So it's not that cut and dry is what I'm trying to say. But I did also like this poem that she wrote. At the end of it, she says, today is more alive than any other day. I was like, huh, yeah, because, you know, like, tomorrow's a hope and yesterday is a memory. So today is really the most alive time, right? She says things like, even though she's busy in body, she tries to make her mind slow down. She says, I begin to invite my mind not to rush along with the pace of my body, to try to take a moment when possible to reflect on what the day has offered. So just those things like that, right? It's like mindfulness sort of things. I'm certain there is no greater tragedy than a life lived in fear. I liked that. I really liked this. She said, I don't need to feel pressure to make every day perfect and exciting and worthy of a final day on earth. That really, really spoke to me, because I feel like since I turned 40, that's kind of what I've done. I'm like, I'm running out of time. I'm running out of time. Every day needs to be fantastic and amazing. And I need to be able to look back on it and think, I'm so glad that I did all those 50,000 amazing things on that day, right? And so that if I didn't have an amazing day, I beat myself up over it. And I'm like, wow, what a waste, what a waste. And I need to slow down. I don't have to make every day, you know, live like you were dying sort of a thing. I really can't live that way. And I know that some people can, and that's great. And that mindset for some people really helps them. But for me, it scares me, because I'm thinking, what if I didn't do enough today? And what if it wasn't fantastic, right? And so I just waste my days worrying that they weren't good enough, instead of just being glad that they were what they were. So I think she and I kind of have similar perspectives on a lot of this stuff. And that's why I'm glad that I read this. And here, the last thing I tabbed, winter is a wise season, reminding us of the importance of quality rest. And she just talks about how in winter she does on purpose slow down. She starts on purpose slowing down in fall, and then just gives herself a rest and a wintering time. And if you look around, right, what is happening in nature? What's happening in my forest right now? If you guys don't know, I live in a forest. Let me kind of show you how I live. So this is my street. I actually do live in a town of about 35,000 people, but my house is pretty much surrounded with nature like this. We get a lot of forest animals here. All sides of my house are really forested like this. And so when I sit out here, like, I am watching chipmunks and squirrels gathering nuts and acorns, right? I am actually, if I sat out there and not under my porch, I'd be bombarded on the head right now with walnuts and acorns falling out of these trees. You know, and I'm watching different animals sort of settling in. When the trees all get bare and you can see the birds better, there are lots and lots of birds gathering seeds and different things. They're all out, you know, looking for the food in the snow when we do have our snow days, that kind of thing. Like, I'm just kind of watching the forest rest, right? I watch all of the beautiful plants and wildflowers. They just kind of, they die, right? They shrivel down and they become very small and they rest. And it's, if we see that happening all around us, right, it kind of inspires us, well, hey, why can't I do that as well? Right? And I know not everybody can, and so, you know, whatever, but I know that I can, and so I need to. And so for that, I really did enjoy the different things that she had to say here in this book. It was from a very new age sort of perspective. She talked about spiritual things, but, you know, it wasn't the Spirit of God. So without that, right, you are going to have kind of that more melancholy, you know, sort of mentality, rather than maybe struggle with hope, right? not mourning like those who have no hope, or feeling, you know, cast down but not destroyed, that sort of thing. I feel like kind of the icing on the cake as far as her like ability to, you know, inspire beauty and things would be if it was from the perspective of a Bible-based, you know, spirituality, and from not a New Age based spirituality. So that is the one part that I felt was kind of a downer. She just never really actually gets to that hopeful part of things as she's talking about, you know, different struggles or different, you know, just the way the seasons affect you or whatever, because she never really brings God into it. So it is unfortunate, but I did enjoy reading it, and I did, you know, I was inspired by the crafts and that kind of thing. So it wasn't all a loss. I think I gave it 3 stars. I guess I didn't tell you what I gave all these other ones. I think I gave Prisoner of Zenda 4 stars because it was well written. You know, it just kind of like wasn't my thing. Rebecca, 5 stars, and Great Expectations I also gave 5 stars too. All right, and then I read just a little bit from a couple of these collections of stories. This is Notes from Walnut Tree Farm by Roger Deakin, and I really just read a few pages of this yesterday. I'm reading, he has it broken down into different months. It's kind of, it's like sections from his journals. And so I read a little bit in October, and I was already inspired. He talks about going and gathering elderberries and making an ink and then using it to paint. And I've got elderberries all over the place. In fact, I'm looking at them right now. So just, you know, walk across the road and grab some. And even if I just put them in the freezer for a day when I, you know, can and feel like making elderberry ink or elderberry, all kinds of things. But I was like, I should do that, right? Because I looked up how to make the ink with different binders and different additives to make it different shades, and I got really inspired to make some ink from natural things. So thank you, Roger Deakin. And then I also read a couple of the stories from Elizabeth Gaskell's Gothic Tales. I read this last year. I told you guys I read this last year and just really didn't grasp a lot of it. I was distracted and just wasn't paying attention. But last night I read her, it's an essay really called Disappearances, and it's on different disappearances. It's kind of her essay they recently had started, like, the detective police was kind of like a thing recently, like maybe within the less than 20 years, maybe 10 years or so. And so she writes this essay about the detective police and talks about different disappearances that she had heard of. And I'm not sure why it's included in this collection of Gothic tales, because they're not scary. They're more like so-and-so left for the day and never came home. The end. Only the last one really talks about, in depth, about a guy and all of the crazy stuff that he did as a criminal. And you read it and you're almost just like, I don't know if that's all true, but it says he was hung for his crime. But I don't know if it's true or not, right? And so when I got the end of it, she kind of sarcastically talks about how, well, the detective police is a great thing, but now it's invading our privacy, right? So it's kind of like the good and the bad of having this detectives on the police force now. Like, on one hand, it's great because we'll solve more crimes, but then on the other hand, it's not great because they're going to be up in our business. So I don't know. I don't know why that was in the Gothic book. Then the next one was The Old Nurse's Story, which I didn't read because I read that last year and the year before. And then which it is kind of Gothic-y, Old Nurse's Story is. And then I read a story called The Squire's Story. It wasn't a Gothic either. It was more like a murder mystery or a thriller in which there is a criminal who is finally caught. Well, this is the one that says he was hung for his crime, and I was wondering if it was true. Anyway, it wasn't a Gothic story. Like, it was just a thriller sort of story. There's another one in here called Lois the Witch. It's about the Salem witch trials. It's not a Gothic story, so I'm just not really sure what's going on with these Gothic tales, because not all of these are actually Gothics. So, and they're not really super suspenseful, and I'm sorry because I know how much everybody likes Elizabeth Gaskell, but I don't know. These are just not doing it for me. I will eventually read through all of them again and give them a shot, but I'm not loving it. So that's it. That is what I have read through for the past couple of weeks of October. We are on October 16th, so a couple weeks left of the month. I can't believe that. I have read several books for Gothic October. I have read several books for Victober. A couple that are just stuff I felt like reading, and I really don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of the month. I'm kind of in, I wouldn't say a slump, I'm just kind of in one of those things where I'm like, I want to read something really fantastic, but I just don't know what. So I don't want to pick something and have it not be really fantastic, right? Because I think I'm in a mood where I would DNF things really easily if they didn't fit exactly what I'm looking for, right? So I don't really know. Well, I gotta go find something to read, so you guys will find out on my next check-in video. I hope everyone is doing well. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.